On the afternoon of December 5, 1945, the war in the Pacific had already ended. Fort Lauderdale, Florida, sat quiet under a mild winter sun. 5 Navy torpedo bombers waited on the runway, engines idling. Nothing about that day suggested anything unusual. It was supposed to be a routine training flight, nothing more. 14 young men climbed aboard, most of them still learning to fly. None of them knew they were about to vanish forever. This was Flight 19, a training exercise called Navigation Problem Number 1. The plan was simple: fly east, turn north, then return home. Lieutenant Charles Taylor, a decorated combat pilot, was placed in command. He had flown over 2,500 hours and served through years of war. No one questioned his ability to lead 5 aircraft home safely. But somewhere over open water, something would go terribly wrong. And the ocean would keep its secret for the next 80 years. At 2:10 in the afternoon, the 5 Avenger bombers lifted off the runway. They climbed over the coastline and turned out toward the open Atlantic. Below them stretched miles of empty blue water, calm and unremarkable. The first leg of the flight went exactly as planned. They reached the drop zone near the Bahamas without incident. Radio checks came back clear, routine, nothing out of the ordinary. For the first hour, Flight 19 was simply another training mission. The exercise called for the planes to release practice bombs on a sunken wreck. That part of the mission was completed without any issue at all. Then came the second leg, turning north over unfamiliar water. This is the point where investigators believe confusion first began to creep in. Clouds were thickening on the horizon, and the light was starting to change. Radio chatter between the pilots grew slightly more frequent, slightly less certain. Something in Lieutenant Taylor's judgment had already begun to shift. Inside the lead cockpit, Lieutenant Taylor stared down at his instruments. His compass, he said later over the radio, was no longer reading correctly. He believed he was flying over the Florida Keys, far to the southwest. In reality, records show he was near the Bahamas, exactly where planned. The other pilots trusted their commander and followed his lead without question. It was a small misjudgment that would soon become impossible to undo. And with each passing minute, the 5 planes drifted further from safety. Taylor radioed the base, saying both his compasses appeared to be malfunctioning. He insisted the squadron was over the Gulf of Mexico, not the Atlantic. Ground control tried to correct him, but the signal was weak and broken. Static swallowed half of every exchange between the planes and the shore. The young trainee pilots had no way to verify their position themselves. They were relying entirely on a man who was now deeply uncertain. Daylight was fading fast, and the weather below was turning rough. By late afternoon, the weather over the Atlantic had turned hostile. Winds picked up, and the sea below churned into rougher, darker water. Radio operators on land picked up fragments of confused conversation between pilots. One transmission reportedly said the ocean itself looked strange and unfamiliar. This line would later be twisted into stories of aliens and portals. In truth, it likely reflected simple disorientation in worsening, fading light. Flight 19 was now flying blind, deeper into open, hostile ocean. Naval control on the ground grew increasingly concerned as minutes passed. They attempted to get a fix on the squadron's location through radio triangulation. The signal was too faint and scattered to pinpoint their true position. Taylor's transmissions became shorter, more clipped, laced with quiet urgency. He told his pilots to fly east, believing that would bring them home. Flying east, in reality, only carried them further out over open sea. Every decision made that hour pulled the men closer to disaster. Back at the naval station, radio operators kept listening through static. At 6:04 in the evening, Taylor gave the order to turn the formation east. He still believed this course would return them to the Florida coast. The transmission was the last time his voice was heard with real clarity. After that, only broken fragments and partial words reached the base. Fuel gauges on all 5 aircraft were dropping steadily toward empty. Night was falling fast, and the storm below was only growing worse. At 7:04 that evening, a final radio call was picked up faintly. It came from one of the trainee pilots, not from Taylor himself. The words were garbled, cut off, impossible to fully make out. After that single transmission, the radio channel went completely silent. No further contact was ever received from any of the 5 aircraft. Somewhere over the dark Atlantic, 5 engines were now running dry. The ocean below was about to become their final resting place. By 8 o'clock, naval officials calculated the planes had run out of fuel. Somewhere in the darkness, 5 Avenger bombers went down into the sea. The Atlantic that night was rough, cold, and utterly unforgiving. A torpedo bomber like the Avenger could sink within 30 seconds of impact. There would have been little chance for any of the men to escape. No distress signal, no wreckage flare, no final call was ever recorded. The ocean simply closed over them without a single trace left behind. At the base, the silence stretching after 7:04 was becoming unbearable. Officers paced the radio room, refusing to accept what the quiet meant. Search protocols were already being prepared before the fuel would even run out. Weather reports confirmed rising winds and heavy swells across the search area. Commanders knew that any rescue would now be a race against the storm. At dawn, they would send everything the base had into the sky. For now, all they could do was wait through the darkness. Just after 7:30 that evening, a Martin Mariner flying boat was launched. Its mission was to search the last known area of Flight 19 signal. 13 men boarded the aircraft, carrying flares and rescue equipment aboard. It climbed into the storm, heading out toward the presumed crash site. Ground control expected regular radio check-ins throughout the search operation. The Mariner sent one brief transmission shortly after takeoff, then went quiet. No one at the base thought much of it in that first hour. As the night wore on, controllers tried repeatedly to reach the Mariner. There was no response, no static, no signal of any kind. A nearby merchant ship reported seeing a brief explosion over the water. Investigators later suspected the Mariner may have suffered a fuel vapor explosion. It was a known risk with that aircraft, especially in rough conditions. Whatever happened, the flying boat and its crew were never seen again. In a single night, 27 men had disappeared without a trace. By morning on December 6th, the full scale of the loss was clear. 6 aircraft and 27 men were now officially listed as missing. Naval commanders authorized one of the largest search efforts in American history. Ships, aircraft, and coastal patrols were pulled in from across the region. Charts were spread across command tables, marking possible drift paths and currents. Every mile of ocean within reach was assigned a search grid overnight. The Navy intended to leave no stretch of water unexamined. Over the following days, more than 300,000 square miles were searched. Ships combed the surface while aircraft scanned the water from above. Coastal patrols checked beaches and shallow reefs for any sign of wreckage. Weather slowly began to clear, giving searchers better visibility across the Atlantic. Despite the enormous effort, not a single piece of debris was found. No oil slick, no life raft, no fragment of any aircraft. The ocean had taken everything and given absolutely nothing back. For 5 straight days, the search continued without any real breakthrough. Sailors scanned the horizon for hours, watching for any unusual shape. Air crews flew low over the water, hoping to spot floating wreckage below. Each day that passed without a discovery made the outcome more certain. Families of the missing men were told to prepare for the worst. Newspapers across the country began reporting on the strange, total disappearance. Still, the ocean offered no answers to anyone searching its surface. Naval investigators began compiling everything known about the final radio transmissions. They studied weather patterns, fuel calculations, and the last reported headings. The working theory was straightforward: disorientation, fuel exhaustion, and a violent storm. But without wreckage, that theory could never be fully confirmed or proven. The lack of physical evidence left space for doubt and speculation to grow. Reporters and writers began asking questions the Navy could not fully answer. And in that gap between fact and silence, a legend began to form. In the months after the search ended, newspaper stories multiplied quickly. Writers speculated about magnetic anomalies, strange lights, and vanishing instruments. Some accounts exaggerated Taylor's radio calls into something stranger than they were. Phrases about the ocean looking wrong were stretched into tales of the supernatural. None of these embellishments came from official naval records or transcripts. Still, the story spread faster than any correction ever could reach readers. The seeds of a modern legend had already been planted in print. By the early 1950s, other unexplained disappearances were being linked to this same stretch of ocean. Ships and planes lost over previous decades were folded into the same narrative. Writers began referring to the region as a triangle of consistent misfortune. The area stretching from Florida to Bermuda to Puerto Rico gained its name. Flight 19 became the founding story of what people now call the Bermuda Triangle. Naval investigators, meanwhile, maintained their explanation: navigation error and severe weather. But the public had already chosen a stranger, more haunting version of events. Decades later, naval historians revisited the case with fresh technical analysis. They confirmed Taylor's compass likely did malfunction early in the flight. Combined with cloud cover and fading light, true navigation became nearly impossible. Investigators noted this was a tragic chain of errors, not anything supernatural. The mariner's loss was separately attributed to a known fuel vapor risk. Two unrelated disasters had occurred within the same stormy evening, by coincidence. Yet even with these explanations, the mystery never fully lost its grip. Search teams and deep-sea divers have explored the region many times since. Sonar equipment and underwater drones have scanned wide sections of ocean floor. Wreckage from other Avenger aircraft has occasionally been misidentified as Flight 19. None of it has ever been confirmed to belong to the missing squadron. The seabed in this region is deep, shifting, and difficult to search fully. Currents can bury or scatter wreckage far from where a plane actually went down. To this day, the resting place of Flight 19 remains completely unknown. Today, the disappearance of Flight 19 remains one of aviation's enduring mysteries. Not because the cause is unknown, but because the proof was never found. 27 men left on an ordinary afternoon and never returned home again. Their families waited for news that would never fully arrive. No headstone marks where they rest because no one knows where that is. The Atlantic Ocean, vast and indifferent, simply absorbed them without a trace. In that absence of evidence, imagination filled in what science could not. The Bermuda Triangle legend endures not because of solid evidence, but because of silence. Official reports point to human error and violent weather, plain and simple. But plain explanations rarely satisfy the human need for deeper meaning. Flight 19 remains a story people return to generation after generation. It represents something we all quietly fear: disappearing without a trace or answer. The ocean keeps its secrets whether we accept the official story or not. And 80 years later, that stretch of water has still never told its truth.